Hey, truth be told, Captain Ron here for Tony Sweet at the 2019 UFO Congress, and let me tell you, this is what these events are so exciting about. Not one of the speakers, not one of the scheduled people, just standing there talking to Richard Dolan, Mr. James Goodall walks by, and he's been kind enough to sit down and talk to me for a few minutes, which I really appreciated, sir.
Not a problem.
Mr. Goodall is an expert in all these things, Area 51 of all things, which is coming up. We have the big 3 weeks away from this storm, Area 51.
I think it's 2 weeks.
2 weeks away. And what perfect timing to talk to the man who knows more about this than anyone else, I would say, right?
Well, I don't know if I know more than anyone else, but
You're certainly an expert in this area.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I've been digging into stuff like this, most of my adult life.
And what is your take? Give us an overall perspective on really what's going on.
Well, first of all, I knew Bob Lazar before he went to work out in the desert, and you couldn't put a gun to his head to convince him that UFOs were real.
Okay.
I've interviewed an SR-71 pilot that chased one and it left him in the dust.
Wow.
I was a friend of Ben Rich, who was the former president of Lockheed Skunk Works.
Sure.
Talked to him about 10 days before he died. He was at USC Medical Center, and he said, Jim, we have things out in the desert. Now, he didn't say Area 51. They never do. He said, we have things
That's what we call it out here, yeah.
Yeah, well,
lay people call it. They don't call it.
it is really Area 51, and the section to the west is Area 50, and the one to the east is Area 52. It was to track, they put a grid on the maps to track fallout from above ground nuclear detonations. And that happened to be one of the grids.
Gotcha.
And they had up to, I think, 201 or 202.
Wow.
But I knew him before he went to work out in the desert. And I met him through John Lear.
Right.
And John's a character. I've known John for about 45 years. And I had just photographed the F-117. This is the fall of '89.
So you saw an F-117 in the fall of '89?
Yeah.
Wow.
And no one, there was some rumblings about it, but it hadn't been made public. It was at '88. I think it was '88, not '89.
Wow.
And I had just photographed it that day. I got back to Lear's house, and he lives near Sunrise Mountain on the east side of, the northeast side of Vegas. He said, I got a buddy of mine coming over. I said, who would that be? I said, a guy named Bob Lazar. So Bob shows up, and we talk, and it's about 9:30 at night. And I was shooting, this is before digital cameras. I was shooting print film. And I had Kodacolor, and I said, I got to wait till tomorrow to get this stuff processed to know if I got anything. And Lazar said, well, I have a C41 processor at my house. Let's go to my house. So we jump in his car. He's going out to West Charleston. And he said, I feel bad for Lear. I said, why is that? He said, he's from this world-famous aviation family.
The Lear jet.
That brought Learjet to the world, among other things, the 8-track tape, nav equipment and stuff like that. I said, and the idiot believes in UFOs. He says, I'm a new...
Lazar says this?
Yeah, this is before he went to work out in the desert.
Wow.
He said, I'm a nuclear physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or touch it, it doesn't exist.
Wow.
And of course, we all know what happened about a year later.
So obviously your position is that Bob Lazar is the real deal, legitimate thing.
I saw his MIT diploma.
You saw Bob Lazar's diploma. That's huge.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of discrepancy about that. People are trying to discredit him from those things.
When they asked Edward Teller, not William Teller, when they asked Edward Teller a number of years ago, do you know Bob Lazar? And he got furious, and he wouldn't comment, and he walked away. If Bob Lazar was a fraud, Edward Teller would have said, he's full of baloney. I don't know him. I have never seen him. I know nothing about him other than he has a story. But the fact that he had worked for Edward Teller, Edward Teller could not comment, because if you're dealing with classified data, you can neither confirm nor deny.
Gotcha.
So by making no comment, now if he was a fraud, he would have said, "Hey, this guy's full of bull." But everybody that he said he worked with, they all have no comment.
Sounds good to me. Now, and all of a sudden, once you saw that Bob did this big interview in June,
Yeah.
Obviously, it's exploded. Now we got tons of people rushing out there to Area 51. Obviously, they're not going to do anything, but
Well, now one of the big fears that the people in Rachel, I'm talking maybe Pat Travis. I've known Pat and Joe.
oh yeah,
I first went to the Little Alien in 1987.
no kidding.
It wasn't.
Rachel's that small town in Nevada. Maybe what 50, 80 people live there, or something like that.
I think there's 54 or 56 full-time residents. It had gotten up to 98
During the boom years.
during the boom years, and it's just, I don't know. It's the Bob is real from everything that I can gather.
Yeah.
When Ben Rich, the retired president of the Lockheed Skunk Works,
Right.
when he tells me to my ears on a first-person phone interview, and I knew Ben for about 25 years. He said, we have things out in the desert that are 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. Not what you think you can build, but what you can comprehend.
Amazing.
And if he's seen movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. I said, Ben, you want to expand upon that? No. And he passed away about 10 days later.
Oh man.
And we had an agreement, and unfortunately he died of cancer before it could be fulfilled. He was going to allow me to interview him, no holds barred, and he was going to spill his guts. And he died too soon. My friend Michael Schratt has seen the letters going back and forth between Ben and myself. This is before the internet.
Yeah.
And there was a thing before the internet.
Right.
So I'm going to be at the Storm Area 51.
You are going to go
base camp.
over at HECO.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Right outside of Ash Springs.
Yeah,
George is going to be there. Jerry Corbin has invited me.
That's wonderful.
And I'm gonna drag Stu Brown along with me. He's the one who did the 1994 article
Oh,
on
yeah?
Popular Science.
Awesome. Awesome.
And the mountaintop photo up there, a lot of very interesting people. There's a commandant for the Tulare Police Department's up there. Glenn Campbell was up there, not the singer, but
Right.
with the Area 51 Research Center guy. And Bob Gilliland was up there with us, the first guy to fly the SR-71.
Wow.
And he's a friend of mine. Very well, he's just passed away.
The SR-71 was that plane that's supposed to be the fastest one and everything. That black one that they have in L.A.
I saw my very first Blackbird. I was TDY at Edwards Air Force Base in February 1964.
Wow.
And I was there to support 3 programs. I was an 18-year-old kid who specialized in ground-based telemetry and communications. So I get to Edwards. Something came in the morning of February 29th, set off the fire systems, but 8 miles from the flight line, couldn't get there. And on March 10th, 1964, I was taking a shuttle flight from Edwards Air Force Base to Hawthorne, the Northrop plant in Hawthorne, California, in LA. And I heard something roaring down in the XB-70 run-up pad, and I went running down the flight line. And
What the hell is this?
I thought it was the X-15. It was black, fire coming out of the rear end. People were too small, though. So all of a sudden they said, hey, we're loading. So it was a Piaggio. It's a pusher, gull-wing type executive transport. We took off over Rogers Dry Lake, and we banked. As we turned, I'm looking straight down on the top of the Blackbird.
Oh, wow.
And
Which is like nothing we've ever seen, right, at that point.
even today, when you look at it, they started developing it 60 years ago. 60 years ago? Yeah. 1958, 59 time frame.
Wow.
And the thing that's amazing, and it's amazing about the Skunk Works, is from signing a contract to first flight was 32 months. The Air Force can't change the paint scheme in a C-130 today in 32 months.
Right.
I saw the Iron Bird for the F-35 in 1989 at the new Lockheed Skunk Works at Palmdale. That's 40 years ago.
Right. Well.
Yeah, 40 years ago.
Yeah, 40 years ago, right now. Yep.
And it's still not fully operational.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. But as far as UFOs go, I was a docent at the Kitt Peak National Observatories west of Tucson.
Okay.
They have 24 telescopes, 22 optical, 2 radio. And for 5 years, Caltech used the 2.1 meter telescope to do exoplanet research. And in this very, very small area of the Milky Way, they were able to identify 8,000 planets orbiting stars.
Jesus.
And I got sort of, that was a 12-hour day. Anytime you went up there to be a docent, and I'm too old for that, too tired for it. But just before I quit my docent job, my volunteer job, they had one of the leading astronomers give a talk to all the docents. He said, based on what they know, with all the research being done worldwide, they estimate that for every star in the universe, there's 1.5 planets.
Amazing.
And based on that calculation, they estimate that there are approximately 2 billion, that's with a B, 2 billion Earth-like planets in an inhabitable zone in a similar sized sun like our own with liquid water. Now, the universe is 14 billion years old. Our little corner of the universe is only 4 billion.
Isn't it interesting that in 1987, we didn't think there were any planets around any stars?
Yeah.
And look at how it's changed so dramatically.
And
It's the opposite of it. Now it's everyone.
when they're done building the giant Magellan telescope in Chile, they're utilizing 7 27-foot diameter mirrors. And they're going to be they figure they'll be able to see back to about 100,000 light years from first light.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
And the thing that cracks me up, in the movie Contact,
Right?
Jodie Foster's character said, if we're the only ones, what a waste of space. And I don't think we're the only ones.
No. No.
A good example, 1972, far western Pacific, at about 11 o'clock at night, an SR-71 pilot is going through a routine nighttime training mission. He's at 78,000 feet, doing about Mach 2.7, which is about 1,700 miles an hour, 1,800 miles an hour.
Sounds funny calling this routine, but okay.
Yeah, no, any day of the week, a Blackbird could fly at 2,100 miles an hour at 80 to 85,000 feet. And there's a 3/4 moon. They're going straight. And Dave, the pilot, I think he's still alive, so I won't give his name, but I have it on tape. He gets a glint of something metallic about 5,000 feet above him and 5 or 6 miles off to his starboard side. So he gets on secure voice. He calls Kadena, where he's flying out of, Kadena, Okinawa.
Sure.
That was Det 1 of the 9th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing. And Dave's called the command post on secure voice, and he said, do we have another bird up? I said, no, you're up there by yourself. He said, no, I'm not.
And at that height, should be completely alone, right?
Absolutely.
Wow.
So he advances the throttles. An SR-71 or any of the manned Blackbirds, at speed and altitude, you're in absolute minimum burner.
Okay.
The airplane loves to fly fast. So he pushes the throttle forward. His backseater gets on the intercom and said, Dave, so we have company. He said, yeah, I'm going to take a closer look. So he's climbing, and he's about a 10-degree bank, and he's getting closer. He said he's about 84,000 feet, doing about Mach 3, and he figures 1.5 miles, maybe 2 miles from this object. And it's hard to judge distance, but he's still getting glint. It's not a smooth surface. It has edges to it.
Okay.
It said all of a sudden this thing took off at about a 30-degree angle of attack and left him like he was heading the other direction.
Jesus.
So fast forward, that was
What year is this?
1972.
Jesus.
Fast forward to 1980, 1981. He retired from the Air Force. He becomes the facility manager at Area 51. And that's the reason I was interviewing him. And he said once he got there, and he knew most everybody there. Once you're in the black community, you sort of stay in it. And once he felt comfortable with everybody there, he started talking to people and asked them, did we build anything that could leave me in the dust? And everybody said, nope.
I mean, that was supposed to be the fastest plane there was.
Well,
Certainly at that time.
if you don't consider Aurora, is it the fastest manned air-breathing aircraft to be known? Now, in 1983, a dear friend of mine who was an air traffic controller, we were roommates in the service in '62 when he was the air traffic controller. He had 17 years in, got an early out, went to work for FAA. He was one of the few controllers that didn't go out during the strike in '81. And he didn't know what my background, he didn't know what my passion was. He knew where I came from, but he didn't know my passion. He said, you know, I think he said it was the spring of 83, 82, 83 timeframe. They tracked a manned air-breathing vehicle with a transponder. He didn't say what it was, but you need that going through controlled airspace. They estimate that the speed was Mach 12, about 8,000 miles an hour.
And now, so that means it's man-made if it's got this transponder.
Right.
There you go.
So they call Beale because this thing had priority over the SR-71.
Wow.
Up to that point, the only airplane that has priority over the SR-71 is Air Force One. So a colonel, full colonel, and a young captain came to the Bay Area Trade Con in Oakland. And my buddy, his name's Bob Garrow, and he was a senior controller at the Bay Area Trade Con in Oakland. He's the one who tracked this thing. And the colonel went to talk with the general manager, and this young captain is talking to Bob. Now, Bob took his job very seriously. And this captain tells Bob, said, well, you probably didn't know you probably misunderstood what you're looking at. And Bob got furious. He said, look, buddy boy, I've been controlling high-speed aircraft, U-2s, RB-57, Space Shuttle, XB-70, before your dad poked your mother for the first time. So don't give me this crap. And Bob's getting furious. All of a sudden, the colonel heard the commotion and came walking out, and he said, Mr. Garrow, you didn't see a thing.
Wow.
And Bob said, oh, I can accept that. But now this is 83, when my friend Dave was there from 80 to 85, there was nothing like that at Area 51. Is there another place? Allegedly, there's one in the extreme northeast corner of Nevada. I've heard that from 4 different people. Yeah. A friend of mine was up there hunting. He's not an airplane guy, he was hunting. And again, 4 upper corner, nothing out there. They're hunting antelope or whatever, and all of a sudden, there were a couple of Humvees there. What are you doing out here? We're hunting. Here's our license, here's our tags. Suggest you go somewhere else because we're doing some testing over here. Is there a base there? Could be. If I don't have an all-terrain vehicle. Yeah. I drive a Grand Sport Corvette, it has about this much clearance, so I can't go going through the desert.
Right.
But I'm very tempted, maybe this fall.
Really? Well, let me ask you this: what is your take on the Tic Tac video?
Hey, we have trained pilots with very sophisticated radars, with imaging, that are seeing these things. And again, I don't think we're alone. I don't think we've ever been alone. Right. There's too many things that have happened. Too many people who are trained observers have seen things. My friend Dave, I can't call him my buddy, but my friend Dave, who chased one in an SR-71. 1972-73 time frame. That's got to tell you something.
Well, you said in '83 they had something going Mach 12, right?
Mach 12.
Well, then doesn't that make you think that possibly by now then we would have something that could do what this vehicle did in the Tic Tac video?
We have the capability today to fly at 3,000 miles an hour and make 90-degree turns.
Really? What about the pilots?
That's unmanned.
Unmanned.
But we have the ability to make literally a 90-degree turn doing a couple thousand miles an hour. Can humans survive that? No. But Bob Lazar has been a friend of mine since before he went to work out in the desert. And I said, well, how do you go from one end of the universe to the other? And he said, there's no time interval. You're here, you want to go here, you focus over here, and as soon as you let go, you're there.
Wow. It's the gravity thing, right?
Yeah.
Making the envelope. Lazar talks about that.
The other thing that sort of adds credibility to Bob Lazar is when I was activated for Desert Shield and Desert Storm, I was in the Air Guard. Active duty Air Force for 5 years, 10-year break, and then 21 years as a historian with the Guard. And I have Bob Lazar's W-2, copy of it.
You got a lot of his personal goods. You saw the MIT diploma.
I saw it, but but that was it. Too bad I didn't take a picture of it.
And he goes, W-2 from where? Los Alamos?
No, from when he worked at S4.
Oh wow, from S4. That's.
But it was U.S. Navy investigative something. I can't remember exactly what it was. So I'm in uniform. I'm an NCO. At the time, I was a tech sergeant. I walk into it was during lunch break. I walk into the Office of Naval Investigations in the Pentagon. And there's a young Lieutenant JG, Navy type, behind the desk, and I, properly saluted him or whatever. And I handed him the W-2, and I said, "Sir, can you tell me where this is located?" He looks at it. He gets up. He goes into the 2 stars office. And about a minute or so, comes out, said, "The Admiral will see you." Now, what the hell does our Admiral want to see me for? So I go in there, I give him a proper salute. He says, he didn't say at ease, he said parade rest. So I'm standing in parade rest, and he's looking at Lazar's W-2, and he says, "Sergeant, I don't know where you got this, but if I ever see your face cross my threshold again, you're going to be the most sorriest son of a bitch in the United States Air Force."
Holy
As he
shit.
gets the W-2, puts it in the shredder, and he says, "You're dismissed."
Oh,
So
man.
So if Lazar was a fake, the guy wouldn't have got as upset as he would.
Right. Right.
And in the
And Bob's never changed his story. He didn't really talk about it for 30 years.
In
Right.
30 years, he never changed
Right.
it.
He's never made any money on this.
And he said it's the biggest mistake he ever made in his life.
Yeah.
I remember when all this stuff was happening before,
first came out, yeah.
during, and after, when he was just the silhouette. I think they went by name Jared or something.
The
like
very, very first
that.
time.
The first time that
With-
George Knapp interviewed
Right,
him.
exactly.
And he's just he is who he says he is. Even now, I have a very good friend, Tom Mahood, who's done all sorts of investigation into Bob. Said Bob's phony. Well, I don't believe that. He's, when George Knapp went to Sandia Labs in Albuquerque, he went to the public access part of their library, and he pulled out a phone book during the time frame that Bob Lazar said he worked there. And in the phone book was Bob Lazar's name. In the room number Bob said he was in, with the phone number Bob said he was working at. He also went to the local newspaper, because Bob said that he was written up he has a jet car.
Right. Right.
And there's a picture of Bob Lazar standing in front of his jet car. It had a Lamborghini Countach fiberglass body on it, and it was, I think it was jet engine. I mean, it was a J-47 or something like that. I mean, it's nothing super. And there it was. Professor Bob Lazar has an unusual hobby. He goes 300 miles an hour on the weekends in his car.
Yeah.
You can't fake that.
Right. Right.
That was real. And
I'm with you.
but they have done such a good job. Phil Klass was one of the top guys of debunking people, whether they were real or not.
They certainly came after him. That nobody, they just tried to shut him down completely. That nobody thought Lazar was. They tried to go after his college degree, everything.
But when the federal government decides you're going to become a non-person, they're pretty thorough at that. But they can't get every nook and cranny. That's where the write-up on the Albuquerque newspaper proved that he was there.
Yep.
Talking about Professor Bob Lazar at Sandia Labs, the address book or the phone book with his name in it in his room, and the fact that the guys he said he worked with were also listed in there, with the same room number and phone number. Is Bob real? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did he do what he said he did? Yeah, and he said it's the biggest mistake in his life ever going public, because it hasn't ruined his life. It's altered his life dramatically.
He's got people showing up and
Yeah.
bothering him all the time.
Yeah.
It's been 30 years. You think by now that we've figured out a lot of the stuff that Bob was working on back then?
Well, according to Ben Rich, we have things out in the desert that are 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. And if you see movies
50
like
years beyond what you can comprehend
Not
is
we-
a big statement.
not what you think you can build,
Right, what you can comprehend.
what you can comprehend. And if you see movies like Star Trek or Star Wars, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort. So that opens up Pandora's box and say, okay, what do you want to pull out of it?
Right.
It's real.
So we can't even guess, right? It's just so far beyond.
Yeah.
Wow. So your position's always been that it's real, that they're out there somewhere.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And just based on the scientific data from when I was up at Kitt Peak, when the scientists and the astronomers are saying there are 2 billion
Right.
Earth-like planets with liquid water somewhere in this universe.
Right.
Our little corner, we're 4 billion years old,
Right.
but they have 10 billion
If
years.
there's 0.000% of them, 1% of them have, then we still have a lot of.
Oh no, yeah,
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Right. The numbers are astronomical.
There's too many things in ancient history here on Earth that there's no explanation for. You go to Machu Picchu in was it Peru?
Yep.
The stones are put together with precision. You can't even put a business card in the crack.
Right.
And this is what, 2,000, 3,000 years old?
Yeah.
There's no soot in the passageways in the Great Pyramids.
Right. How'd you see them there?
Yeah.
Right.
They have the ever-ready bunny there to help them light the place up.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and I got my first taste of what are UFOs. My dad gave me Chariot of the Gods for Christmas.
Sure. 1969. I think.
Yeah, and Kurt's second book. I can't remember. It was a follow-on to
The
it.
follow-up from Eric. Yeah.
And then there's an Army colonel
Corso.
who wrote the book.
Day after Roswell.
Day after Roswell.
Colonel Corso.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just too many pieces of the puzzle. Okay, there's a few pieces that are missing, but there's a lot of that puzzle is there. And sometimes you have to stand way back and squint your eyes to see the picture. But we're not alone.
And why is there such this resistance? Why is it still laughable sometimes?
We may not be the ones in control of the dissemination of the information. And the only way the world and the general public is going to accept alien beings and UFOs is if during a live news conference in the
White
Rose
House
Garden,
lawn, yeah, right.
just like in Mars Attacks, they're gonna come down.
Right. It's
Yeah.
crazy that it takes that much for some people. I mean, we have an overwhelming amount of evidence now.
Now one of the justifications for squashing any dissemination on official dissemination on UFOs is the glue that holds most of the world together is a firm belief in a supreme being, God, Allah, Buddha, whomever.
Right.
And if all of a sudden if you were to dissolve that glue, there would be anarchy. I mean, if you're well educated, you have an open mind, you can accept that. In fact, that we're not alone. But if you're some backwater like L.A. or that's the wrong place. If you're some backwater place, you're uneducated, you've been worshiping something, whether it's Jesus Christ, whether it's Muhammad, whether it's Buddha, Adam, whatever. If all of a sudden everything you believed in your heart and soul and your passion towards the supreme being, all of a sudden it turns out this supreme being flies in round discs.
Right.
And is only about this tall and is gray. It would shatter your being. Is what
But don't you think, what about the fact that it's clandestine by choice? If they wanted to expose themselves, they could.
I think they expose themselves all the time. I mean, my boss, Wayne Gatlin, a Major General, he was the Adjutant General. No, he's the Chief of Staff for Air for the Minnesota Air Guard. He flew combat during World War II. This is in the mid-1950s. He's on alert. They have F-94Cs shooting stars, Lockheed. They have an afterburner, but they're not supersonic. Maybe in a dive, they could. They get an alert of an unknown from the Findlay Air Force Station, which is up on the north shore of Lake Superior. So they scramble the jets. There's 3 of them. They head out to the center of Lake Superior. Now, up until, I don't know if they've changed it, but aircraft are not allowed to cross over Lake Superior. You go around it because it makes its own weather. The water is so cold.
Wow.
So if it's 95 degrees, dew point's 80 degrees, water temperature's 46. I mean, you're going to get, yeah. So so General Gatlin and his other 2 aircraft that launched, they're vectored towards this unidentified, and they see it. It's too far to get a good description. So the WISO, the weapons systems operator, turns on the radar, and as soon as he turns on his radar to get a lock on, the whole radar system just. And Findlay saying what's heading towards us, and General Gatlin can see he's in full burner, which is F-94, maybe hit 500, maybe 550 miles an hour, and he's going full blast towards Findlay. All of a sudden, the Findlay guy said it disappeared off our radar. And as General Gatlin is getting close, it's well, the reason it's not on your radar, it's directly above the geodesic dome.
Wow.
And he said it was clear, visibility unlimited, and at 30,000 feet, if you look straight up, you could probably see the stars. And he said this thing, as he got close, the wizard turned on the radar again. As soon as he got a lock on, it just died, and this thing went straight up and disappeared.
Interesting.
So I asked General Gatlin, this would be in the 70s. The event happened in the 50s. I said, General Gatlin, if I was an Air Force pilot and I encountered a flying saucer, an unknown, what should I do? He said, forget about it and go to the Oak Club and get drunk. I says, why is that? He said, that's the quickest way to ruin your career in the United States Air Force.
So think about all the cases out there we don't know about, that we didn't hear about, that the guy went and got drunk and didn't tell anybody, right?
General Gatlin didn't tell anybody.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody in the unit knew, but this is while Operation Blue Book was still going. Now I had a friend of mine who
the Project Blue Book investigation.
A guy who worked in spooky programs was in our unit for about a year and then disappeared. He said, Jim, there are 2 reasons why Operation Blue Book came to an end. I said, what's that? He said, they either proved without a doubt that UFOs are real or they're not. You make your own conclusion.
Wow. We know the answer to that.
They're here.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that you talked about when they were coming upon this UFO and it went straight up. That's fascinating because this Tic Tac video, that's what they talked about. We talked to Kevin Day earlier, and he said that these things would go 28,000 feet, straight down to 50 feet above the water, and then when the plane went over, it'd go straight back up 28,000 feet. That's an interesting coincidence or similarity in the story of how these are operating. And we obviously don't do that. And this was in a fraction of a second it dropped 28,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the 1950s, we didn't have anything that could hover for a while and then go straight up at an incredible rate of speed. Right. General Gatlin doesn't know how fast it was accelerating, but it went out of sight.
Right.
And it just kept on going.
Again, that's so reminiscent of what Kevin Day was saying about this incident that happened, at the Nimitz. It's incredible. 28,000 feet down to 50 in 0.7 seconds, I think he said. That's insane.
And how many reports have been just shit canned?
Yeah. That's what I always wonder about. These are the few that we hear about. Get Nick's bits and pieces.
It's just now that the military is starting to admit that some of our guys have chased UFOs. I mean, it was a career killer if you went public.
Sure.
With something like that.
Yep. It's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Jim, thanks for sitting down and talking to us. I appreciate it. Couldn't be a better time. We've got Storm Area 51 coming up in a couple weeks.
I'll be there.
And he'll be there. Watch for him. And hopefully we'll see some UFOs, too.
I've been responding on Facebook about the Storm Area 51.
Yeah.
And someone said, well, there are going to be 2 million of us. How, there were too many of us to stop. I said, all they have to do is shoot the guy in front.
Right, one.
Right.
But who's going to keep going?
But from the horse's mouth, they are very, very concerned with Antifa.
Oh, yeah?
And people in Rachel are concerned about that. The Air Force has no jurisdiction outside the perimeter of Area 51. The governor of the state of Nevada is seriously considering activating the National Guard.
Wow. No
protester, period, will be allowed to penetrate the perimeter of Area 51. That came from the two-star, and that came down from the Pentagon. Period. So they've amassed probably as many non-lethal crowd control systems you can. I mean, you have the big microwave, and then you have the sound. And a buddy of mine who was a photographer at the Skunk Works, he said he was photographing the Blackbird from behind when it was in full burner. He had earplugs. They were purposely made for him. The Mickey Mouse ears. He had a ballistic vest on, and he said he was nauseated just by the pulsing of the engine.
Wow.
Not necessarily the noise. The noise was incredible too, but noise and or microwave. They turn a big microwave beam at you, and all of a sudden you're going to feel like you're on fire. It's not going to kill you. It's non-lethal. And if any idiot or idiots, if they somehow get across the border, across the perimeter, they are going to be one sorry son of a gun.
What's your prediction? You think a lot of people are going to go out there, and do you think anyone will actually try to go across?
Well, I think there's
got to be one idiot.
You have more than 3 people together. One of them is going to be an idiot.
Right, there you go. All right.
But there's only a few places that you can easily access it.
Right.
You have the northern fence line, which I've been to. I've been to the fence line over 80 times.
Have you really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I've also been in Area 51 unauthorized, and I was in about 3 miles, and I just got weirded out, and I had to leave.
What's the best thing you ever saw when you got that close 80 times?
I have never seen anything that I couldn't explain.
Okay.
Everything I saw is conventional. Everything I've seen out there, you've seen, or you had the ability to see. The thing is, that area, and I've interviewed a couple dozen people that work there full time. I got a friend of mine who spent 35 years at the Skunk Works. 10 years of his life was at Area 51.
Wow.
He was there for the U-2, for the Blackbirds, for the D-21 tag board, and he was there for early F-117 flights.
Amazing.
And it's a pretty remote place. But once you get through the foothills, you have about 6 or 7 miles of dry lake bed to cross. And there's no place to hide out there.
Right.
And trust me, they're not going to allow you. I don't care who you are or how many.
Right.
If need be, now there'll be the only fatalities that will happen is some stupid idiot climbing up some rocks, falls and breaks his neck, or he gets into a car crash or something.
They'll use non-lethal.
Everything will be non-lethal, and they will throw the book at you. He said, we're not playing games. They have security personnel from all over the Air Force and the military. that can be cleared to get into the test site.
Wow.
They're going to be there.
It's going to be crazy. We'll find out in a couple of weeks, won't we?
Yeah.
It's going to be great. Jim, you're a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you sitting down and sharing it with our audience. We really appreciate it. For Truth Be Told, this is Captain Ron here at the 2019 UFO Congress. We'll see you in 2 weeks at Storm Area 51.
Yeah.